Hello, it is me, Andrine, Jewish American Priestess, and I'm here today for possibly the last reading of Elul, possibly the last reading of the year 5782, as we come into this last weekend of Elul. And I have for you today 3 of the fruits from my garden that have come in this Shmita year as we let everything lie fallow. Nonetheless, some plants continue to grow. The trees continue to grow without particular assistance from me. The rains came, the sun shone, and these trees grew. And here we have 3 fruits that are coming out of my garden, and we're going to choose 3 different readings based on these fruits. The first one is this Windfall Pear, and it came from the tree across the fence, but they always come into our yard, and they're low enough that we can reach them. I just picked this one up off the ground outside, and they're actually quite delicious. I do tend to bake them just so they're softer. So that's the first choice, is this pear. The second choice is this tiny little fig that came from our fig tree, and generally the figs are larger, but we did a heavy pruning right before Shmita, so the figs are small and they're not quite ripe. So if you're drawn to this tiny fig, that would be the second choice today. And the third choice I have for you today is this plum. And this is an Italian prune, and we have a tree of those as well. And this one hasn't even had the blush rubbed off of it yet. And these are delicious. These are amazing. We don't have a huge crop this year, but we do have, the ones that we do have are wonderful. So those are our 3 choices today: the pear, the fig, and the Italian prune plum. So take a minute to consider which of these 3 is calling to you. I'll set them here. Are you feeling like you've had a windfall, or that you have fallen in the wind? Do you feel like you are not quite ripe, not quite ready for the new year, but have lots of potential? Or do you feel ripe and soft and ready to eat? Choose one of those 3 fruits, and I'll put the timestamps down below, and we'll do a reading for each of these. Alright, for those of you who chose the pear, we're going to do a Hebrew reading for you. I'm going to set this up here. Hopefully we'll still be able to see it when I zoom in. So let's just start with some letters. It's been a long month. A lot of things going on. So let's see what this last week will bring us as we come to the very end of the year, into Rosh Hashanah proper. The first letter that's going to come out is the Yud. How appropriate. The Yud, of course. We're going to go with the one right before that. And we have Shin, also perfect. What's coming next is the Mem. Nice. I'm going to throw down 4 more here, maybe 5. This goes above. This goes below. This goes above. This goes below. And one more. Let's see if, whoa, I got that half one again. I guess that's I did glue it, but I think the sari must have broken again. Yeah, it did. Alright, I have to be making a new set soon. Okay, I'm going to try to zoom in so we can get a better view of each of these letters. There we go. Alrighty, we'll straighten them up as we go. So, starting with the Yud, as I've talked about over and over again, the Yud is that one point. It is the smallest of all the letters, and it represents the one point into which the divine had contracted before the universe burst forth into being. And it is the number 10 in the Gematria. It's the 10th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and it is the first letter of the divine name, Yud He Vav He. So it is that smallest thing that holds so much. 10 is the ultimate manifestation of the number 1, 1 being the oneness of all, the oneness of the divine. And it is affiliated with the month of Elul. That's why it seems so appropriate today to have that come up. It also the constellation Virgo, and sexuality in the body soul. It looks a little bit like a sperm, so how appropriate is that? And it's like a little bit of a seed. But Yud also stands for Yad, which means hand. It's also that pointer that we use when we point to the Torah while we're reading, the Yad. So what's up for us right now is this, again, manifestation, the end of Elul, the month of Elul. The hand that we're using to both point toward Torah, which is teaching or truth, and that we're using to do good in the world, that we're using to right the wrongs that need to be corrected before we head into Rosh Hashanah. That hand, your hand, my hand. And that's what's up right now. What has come right before that is the letter Shin. And the letter Shin is the representation of fire. It is the mother letter that represents the creative element of fire. You can see the 3 flames coming up from below there. And it has this association with summer, which is, again, just come before us. I don't know where you are in the world, but in the northern hemisphere, in the northwestern part of the United States, fall is here. We can feel it. Even though the temperatures are still in the 80s, it feels different. There's something different about the light and the coolness of the breeze. So Shin was that summertime, that heat, that fire in the sky, and the heat in the summer. And it does connect to summer in time, and it also connects to the head and the body. Maybe we've been in our head a little bit just before now. But it represents the sky in the world in terms of the sun and the moon and the stars, all the lights, all the fiery lights in the sky. So that which has come right before Elul is the summer and the heat, and maybe a little bit excess of thought. And now we're in this time of contemplation where we're focusing on the one. And what's going to help us right now in this time of focus, of that oneness, that Yud, maybe the action that we need to take in order to get us through into Rosh Hashanah, is the letter Vav. The letter Vav is representative of like a standing person with a slightly bowed head, but it's connection. It's connection with the divine. The letter Vav in Hebrew is literally the word and. It is as in heaven and earth, which is the first use of the letter Vav in the Torah. It is the number 6 in Gematria, so it stands for the 6 days of creation. So it's also a little bit about action. It has to do with like the creative act. The 7th day was the day of rest, but this connection where the divine connected with the created universe in the act of creating, in the act of engraving and carving all of the universe into being. So not dissimilar to the Yud, which is about action in the world and the hand. Vav also has something to do with creation and action. There's this interesting paradox about the letter Vav. And I'm not a Hebrew scholar. I know a little Hebrew. But my understanding is that if you add Vav to a verb, it reverses the tense of it. That it makes past verbs future and future verbs past. You're going to have to ask a Hebrew scholar about that, but that is my understanding about the letter Vav. So it has this ability to connect the past and the future. It is the letter in the center of the divine name, the Yud He Vav He. There's like 4 letters, so it's not really a center, but if one was going to split it somewhere, perhaps Vav would be the appropriate place. It is a peg that connects the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the desert. The walls were connected with pegs that were Vavs, and both to the ground, like guy wires, but also the walls connecting to each other, and the veil that surrounded the Holy of Holies was connected with these pegs or hooks that were made of gold and silver. So it's this connection that is valuable, like a valuable connection in the world and to the divine. It's a little bit like a spine. Like I said, it's like a standing person, so it's about standing straight, but as you see, the head is bowed. So there's a little bit of humility there. So being able to stand tall in one's own self and understanding while having humility because of the connection with the divine. And that's what's going to help us in this time where we're making space. We're making space within ourselves to make teshuvah, to return to the one. And what's on the lower line here is the letter Ayin. And Ayin, when something's on the lower line, it generally is about something that isn't going to help us, but it can also be about what we're afraid of, or what we're afraid isn't going to happen. So Ayin is an eye, and so it's about vision and sight, and it's about being watched over by the divine. It says in Torah that Shekhinah has the ability to watch over all of the people. And it also is the foundation of laughter. In the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, each of the letters is affiliated with some foundation. And laughter is the foundation affiliated with Ayin. And I think about that in terms of an eye, and when somebody laughs, you can see it in their eyes. So this being on the lower line, I'm going to read it 2 ways. One is maybe laughing things off right now isn't going to be beneficial for you as you contract into this idea of what is the thing I need to focus on. Or maybe there's a concern, a fear in you that you aren't being watched over by the divine, that the divine doesn't care, or that somehow you've lost track of or connection with divinity right now. And if you find yourself in that position, bring yourself back up here to this understanding about connection, that you have connection with the divine, particularly when we're in this small space, when we have shrunken ourselves into focusing on what we need to do to create teshuvah in our lives. Focus back up on connection if you find yourself being concerned about that. If you're concerned you're not seeing what you need to see, or that you're not being watched over the way you need to be watched over, know that the connection is happening. Reach for that connection as well. And stand tall. Stand tall with your spine, but have some humility. And if we get through this phase right now, this last week, we're moving into the future, which is Mem. And the letter Mem is a mother letter as well. So we've had Shin, the mother letter, in the past, and we've got this Mem mother letter right now, and that is representative of the creation element of water. Water, Mayim Chaim, the waters of life. And some say, the Torah is likened unto water, that it bathes us and leads us and guides us in the flow of things. I just started reading a book about God as a metaphor, and water is one of the early metaphors in this book, that we can immerse in it, and we are also created in it and of it. Mem is like a womb. It's got that vessel shape here. If you look at it this way, it sort of looks like a uterus. And it is the number 40 in Gematria, which would indicate 40 weeks of gestation in the human. So it speaks about pregnancy. It speaks about that gestation period that we may have. We're moving into this gestation period of the 10 days of awe as we go into Rosh Hashanah. We have 10 days to gestate and determine what our fate will be before we hit Yom Kippur. So it is in the Sefer Yetzirah, it talks about Mem as being water, but it also, in the same way that Shin corresponds to the summer, Mem corresponds to the winter. In that it's a cold, water can be cold and wet. So that's also coming up in the future, is this idea of the winter, maybe slowing down and gestating. And so that's what's coming up for us in the near future, this idea of gestation and water. And we have what is going to assist us in this time just ahead is the letter Chaf. And Chaf is the palm of a hand reaching out like this. And it can be a palm of a hand or the sole of a foot. It is it has potential for being about power. The word koach starts with chaf. But it also has to do with receiving and giving. And it's interesting because it has connections with the sukkah. Like the schach on top of a sukkah has two chafs in it, and it is this material that we put on top of our sukkah that shields over it, but has space so that the sun and the stars can be seen through it. And so it's like a protective palm over the sukkah, and we can see it as like the wings of Shekhinah protecting us. It has to do in the celestial, each of the letters is connected with a celestial body, and this one is connected with the sun. So it is over us in the sky. It has the power, and that power can be used for good or evil, I suppose. It has the binary foundation of wealth and poverty. So ideally, we are focusing on spiritual wealth and not material wealth. Material wealth can lead to spiritual poverty. So, I mean, it's great to have resources, and we can call on them right now when we're going into the future. That's going to help us with this future time when we are in the mem phase, in this gestation phase. Both reaching out our hand to give what we have, our resources to give, and reaching out our hand to receive those resources that we are intended to receive, not turning away from the resources that are being offered to us if we need them. So, yeah, Chaf has to do with that giving and receiving, palm of the hand, the wings of Shekhinah, and the sukkah, the top of the sukkah, protecting us from the sun. And what may not assist us in this phase is the lamed. Now, lamed is below the line, and but interestingly, it's the only letter that reaches above the line in Hebrew, and it's reaching up for connection with divinity the same way the vav is up here. But having it below the line, again, I'm going to read it the way of a fear that maybe we don't have that connection, that we're concerned about not having that connection. Lamed also is the first letter of the word lev, which means heart. And maybe we're concerned that we don't have enough heart to get through this period of time, that this period of the 10 days when we are gestating, that maybe we're losing heart. And again, lamed in the Sefer Yetzirah corresponds to the foundation of action. Here we've had action, action, action. So it's about action. Maybe we're afraid we're not doing the right actions, or that we're not doing the actions that we have with heart in order to get through our 10 days. But again, if we are concerned about that, if we're concerned about losing the connection to the divine, or not having enough heart to do the appropriate actions to get through our 10 days of teshuvah, then we can move back up here to koach. Know that we have the power to do that. Know that we are watched over and shielded by the divine, by the source. And that will get us through this period of gestation, which I'm guessing is the 10 days of awe coming up between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And once we are through that phase, what's going to be our outcome here is the tzadi. Now, sadly, my tzadi, like I said, is broken in half, not unlike the shattered pieces of divine light that have sprinkled into our world. But the tzadi is about righteousness. It's about justice. It's about judgment, tzedek, tzadik, all these things, which is all what Yom Kippur is all about. It's about being judged for our actual deeds and the way we are turning away from things that are not healthy or appropriate, and toward things that are right and just. The tzadi is the number 90 in Gematria, and it corresponds to the number of years old that Sarah was when Yitzhak was born. And Yitzhak, we tell this story during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, during the high holidays, that the story of Yitzhak, and how Sarah was an old woman when he was born, and she laughed. She laughed when she heard she was pregnant, because how can that be? And nonetheless, Yitzhak was born, and Yitzhak has the letter tzadi in it, and it indicates that any child who's born can be a tzaddik, can be a righteous one, can be holy, and designated for service to the divine. Tzadi has to do with the foundation of thought in the Sefer Yetzirah. And so we're moving again from this phase of the head in the body, maybe passion, more emotion, head in the body, into this phase of contraction, into our smallness, our hermit phase, if you will, where we're contemplating this entire month of Elul as we contract ourselves and make space in our hearts and in our minds for the ability to see what hasn't served us and what hasn't served the world. And right now we're focusing on this connection with the divine. And if we find ourselves concerned about not being able to see, not feeling secure and being watched over by the divine, we can trust in the connection that's there, that we've built in this time. And as we move forward into this gestation period of the 10 days of awe, what's going to help us is that giving and receiving, and the knowledge of power, and the knowing that we are being watched over and protected by divinity. And if we find ourselves being afraid of not being able to reach up and connect, and not having the right heart to turn, to make teshuvah, then again, reach back up into that power, and reach back up into our power and our ability to give what we have and receive what we need. Not thinking that we have to do everything ourselves. And when we do that, it will bring us into this time of justice. That knowledge that what needs to happen will happen. The justice will be served, that we will maybe turn to become more just, that we will become the tzaddik that we are intended to be, and we will have this ability to think more clearly, and that foundation of thought. As we are moving into this very last weekend before Rosh Hashanah. So for those of you who chose the pear, this is your reading for today. I wish you a lovely Shabbat this weekend in preparation for Rosh Hashanah coming up Sunday night. And if I don't see you then, I'll see you next year. Okay, for those of you who chose the tiny, tiny fig, it's got a little bit of a blush on it. We're going to do a reading today. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so that we can get a good view of what we're looking at. And we're going to pull out I don't know how many that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 letters, I think. The first letter coming out, maybe I'll have to zoom out a little bit. First letter coming out is the letter Tet. Yep, I'm going to have to zoom out just a hair. The letter Tet. And that which came right before, we have the letter Aleph. What's coming right after this? We have the letter Ayin. And we're going to pull out 5 more. Okay, this one is Samech. We have the Gimel. We have the Pei. And the Dalet. And one more. Kaf. All right. A central issue today for those of you who chose the fig is the letter Tet. And the letter Tet is a vessel. It's a container. You can see that it looks like a little bit of a cup. It's got an opening in the top. It is the number 9 in Gematria, which represents the 9 months of gestation of the human in the womb. And so Tet is a sort of a womb and a vessel. And it also represents goodness. The word Tov, which means good, represents, it starts by the word letter Tet. And so it's about the good that is within. It is about renewal insofar as the number 9 represents, it harkens to the shofar blasts. So those of you who've been following the shofar this month, we've been sounding the shofar every day. And you'll notice that we do the blasts in sets of 9. We have 9 sets of 9, basically. We end up with 100 blasts on Rosh Hashanah. But there are 9 staccato blasts in the Truah. We hold the Tekiyah for 9 counts. And there are 9 sets. So each person is reborn again on Rosh Hashanah, and this is that womb that has the good potential in it. And it speaks to this idea of renewal. It is like a clay pot. In Breshit, the first thing that is described as good is light. So it's like a clay vessel full of light, full of goodness of light. And that's our central issue right now as we move into this last weekend before Rosh Hashanah. We have this container where we are vessels. We're trying to be vessels of goodness. That we are gestating in this womb as we move into Teshuvah, into Rosh Hashanah. And we have the potential for renewal and rebirth. And that which came right before that is Aleph. Aleph is the first letter, of course. It is the number 1. And it has this whole story here. If you look at it, you can see on the upper right corner we have a Yud, which represents the divine name, the Yud He Vav He. And in the lower left we have another Yud, which is like the idea of humanity, and between it a Vav, which is connection and separation. So we have the Yud above, the Yud below, and this slanted Vav, which both connects and separates. And so it has this this paradox of unity and oneness as well as multiplicity. So the divine is one, and all of creation is one, and yet there are all these intricate parts and pieces. So we have both connection and division. Aleph also, if you spell it with different vowels, spells Elef, which is 1,000. So we have both this idea of oneness and manyness, and unity and plurality. Though all is made up of ones and zeros, if you're talking about in the binary language. It is a mother letter, and it's the mother letter that represents breath and air and the chest in the body. So it represents that, the atmosphere basically that keeps us alive. You know, the other two mother letters are fire and water. And we have to live in between. We have to live in that space between the fire in the sky and the water of the ocean. And we need all of them to live, but this is the space in which we live. It's this balancing space, this Goldilocks zone between fire and water. And it is the thing that gives us life in the beginning. In the very first moment of our life is when we take that breath. And the very last moment is when we let it out. So what came before this time right now is this idea of oneness, this paradox of multiplicity and unity. Maybe we've had some time to focus on the one, and maybe we've been solitary in the world, and now we're kind of coming together with community as we move into the high holidays, whether we're doing that virtually online or actually getting together in person. Some of us are getting together in person, some of us are meeting online virtually. And what's going to help us in this time of gestation, as we're in this time of preparation for high holidays, this womb that we're gestating in, is this idea of being surrounded. Samech is a surrounding circle, and it is that which protects and surrounds us. In Paleo Hebrew, it is a thorn, and that speaks to this idea of using thorn hedges to protect a field or a home. And so we're surrounded with love and protection as we are in this gestation phase. Samech is it's about cycles and circles. It's about, bringing the year around to the beginning again. It's about seasons. We're just finishing with summer. Today is the first day of autumn. So we've just come into the equinox where we finished up the summer, and here we are in this new season heading into the new year. And it speaks to like reincarnation almost, renewal certainly with the Tov, but with the Tet, but reincarnation, this idea of a wheel. In Hebrew, the word Gilgul means wheel, but it also can mean reincarnation. And whatever it is that we have that's surrounding us and supporting us right now, whether it be comfort and a soft place to land, or the thorn which protects us, like the rose having a thorn on it to protect us. The letter Samech is also affiliated in the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, with the foundation of agitation. And that can be a positive agitation in terms of excitement and, moving forward with joy. Or it can be less positive agitation, and in that which provokes us to change. Maybe things are not as they should be. And this is the time of year where we look at that. And so the Samech may be provoking us in a direction that will bring us more good. So that's what's going to help us in this time, this idea of being surrounded with protection and experiencing some sort of agitation, either positive or less positive. And what's not going to be helpful right now is the Gimel. The Gimel is the third letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and it is a camel. It's a foot walking forward. And I'm going to read this two different ways. One is that what may not help us right now is running away from this gestation period, trying to avoid it. It's not going to be helpful to try to sprint away from what we need, whatever agitation we've got going on. We need to face it and not walk away from it. And the other way to look at Gimel is about, if it's on the lower line, is this fear that we're not going to move forward, the fear that we're going to get stuck here, that we're going to get stuck in this womb, that we won't ever birth. And if we're afraid that we're not moving forward, then we need to move back up to this this idea of protection, being surrounded with protection, but also that agitation that will help us move forward, that thing that gives us maybe a little discomfort so that we have to move out of the womb. Because we can't stay in there forever, right? If we stayed in the womb forever, no one would be okay. So as we move through this time of gestation, allow that discomfort, that maybe we've grown too big for this womb and we have to move on. There's a new season, a new cycle. Don't be afraid of moving forward, but also don't run away. Don't run away from what you need to do right now in this time of searching for the goodness within. And where that will lead us to is the letter Ayin. We have the letter Ayin here, right in the next place. And Ayin is an eye. It's about seeing and vision, about being able to see what is coming, having sight, but also being watched over by Yah, by Shekhinah. They say that Yah's eyes are on all who wrestle with the divine. So we are being watched over by the divine, and we are given vision to see what we need to see. And Ayin is the number 70 in Gematria, which is an ultimate manifestation of completion. So the number 7 is the number of days of creation, and 10 times 7 is that ultimate manifestation of creation. So we've had the day's creation, and here we are in Ayin, the 70, which is the completion. And because we're at the end of the year, that makes sense that we've got this ultimate manifestation of completion here in the Ayin. That's where we're moving into. The Ayin is also affiliated with the foundation of laughter in the book of creation, the Sefer Yetzirah, the foundation of laughter. So we're moving into a time perhaps of joy as we complete the work that we're doing, the good work that we're doing with the Tet. There are a lot of affiliations with the number 70 in the Torah. There are many cycles of 70. There are the 70 descendants of Noach and the 70 souls that went to Egypt with Yaakov. There were 70 elders in the desert with Moses, and there's 70 seats on the Sanhedrin. And interestingly, in the Zohar, the Ayin is often interchanged with the Aleph because they're both letters that do not have an inherent sound. They're only sounded in relation to other letters. So it also can be seen as the number 1, because we had 70 descendants of Noah plus Noah. We had 70 souls that went to Egypt plus Yaakov. We had 70 elders in the desert plus the one Moshe. So ayin and aleph are frequently interchanged. I find that really interesting that you're going from the aleph, which is one, through the goodness and gestation of tet, into the ayin, which is both this ultimate completion and the number one again. Again, these are often interchanged. Your past and your future are tied up together. And that which is going to help us right now, above the ayin, we have the letter pei. And pei is a mouth. It is the mouth of the divine speaking creation into existence. And it is the number 80 in Gematria. It is the ultimate manifestation of the infinite. So it's this idea of creation through speech and communication. Because the divine spoke the world into existence and used speech to carve all the pathways through which wisdom runs. Speech is the thing that differentiates us from other animals, that we are able to communicate so precisely with so many words, and maybe imprecisely with so many words. And pei is a spiral. You can see it spiraling in and out. It is this labyrinth that is like a vortex of the breath. And out of that comes sound and meaning and substance. It has this infinite microcosm and this infinite macrocosm both in it. It is this again, manifestation of the infinite. Infinity in space and time. And, you know, again, interesting that it is also a cycle and like a spiral, and this is a circle. We've got both of those on the upper line. These are the things that are going to help us right now, this idea of cycles and spirals. And knowing that when we come around to the beginning of a year, it's just another, you know, it may look like we're in the same place sometimes, like a spiral staircase, but we're not. We're at a different level now. We've gone maybe leveled up, ideally. And that's what's going to help us at this time as we're looking at this ultimate completion of the ayin is speech and spirals. And maybe what's going to help us in this ultimate completion is saying what we need to say, creating our reality through our words, like using affirmations or using our words to make amends where we need to make amends right now as we head into this last weekend before Rosh Hashanah. To repair that which we can repair as best we can before we get into Yom Kippur. And what isn't going to help us right now is the Dalet. And the Dalet is a doorway, it's a gateway. It is humility and humbleness. And again, I'm going to read this a couple different ways. Either don't walk through the gate until we've finished the work here, until we've got to the completion which we're using speech to finish the things we need to finish. Don't walk through that gate yet. That's not until next week. Finish what we need to finish this weekend. Or if you're concerned about not being able to get through the gate, if you're concerned about not having the humility to do what you need to do to get through that gate, then move yourself back up to communication. Move yourself back up to sight, knowing that things are coming into the end here, the completion, and trusting that if we speak, things will become manifest, that reality will rearrange itself to make the wholeness that we need to make to get through to the end of this cycle. So don't fear the gate, and don't fear not having humility. Instead, speak what you need to speak. Dalet is the foundation of wisdom and foolishness. So turn away from foolishness. Turn away from foolishly running through the gate when we're not ready, and instead speak what needs to be spoken into existence, and see what needs to be seen. And don't be afraid of not having the wisdom, because it's there. It's there for you. all of the wisdom has been spoken for you already in this spiral. It's there for you if you can just take the time to see it. And that will bring us through to our final letter, which is Kaf. And Kaf is it is a palm of a hand being held out open for receiving and for giving. So if you have something that you need to give, then you should give that. But don't give more than you have to give. And if you're supposed to receive something, receive it graciously. Allow both the giving and the receiving. Give what you have to give, but receive what you're meant to receive. This has to do with the palm of a hand, and it has to do with power, koach. So be strong. It will bring us into this period of strength and even power. It'll bring us into this phase where we can receive what it is we need to receive and give what we need to receive. The Chaf rules over the celestial body of the sun in the sky. So that's a really positive symbol for what's coming for you here. The sun is about, the source energy. It's about power. And it has to do with the foundation of wealth and poverty, and ideally spiritual wealth. Physical wealth can often result in physical, spiritual poverty. So if you have something to give, if you have tzedakah to give it so that you have the wealth spiritually. But don't give so much that you become impoverished. This is what's coming for you in the near future. Is this idea of wealth and poverty? But let's have wealth. Let's have spiritual wealth. Let's have wealth of spirit. So, again, as we're in this gestation period with the Tet, and you've just come out of this time of maybe being solitary, being alone, or attempting to connect with the divine. And now we're in this gestation phase right now with Elul, this last weekend of Elul. Gestate here and look up to protection. And don't run away from that which you need to do in order to get through this time. And don't be afraid of not having the ability to move forward, because you do. You have this safety. That'll bring us into this phase of being able to see, to this ultimate completion time, where we can speak what we need to speak into existence, not being afraid of going through the gateway. And it brings us into power and sun, into this new season, this new year. And for those of you who chose the tiny fig, so much potential in there. So much power, so much deliciousness. This has been your reading, and if I don't see you before then, I will see you in the new year. All right, for those of you who chose the plum, this juicy Italian prune, let's get into your reading. I'm going to pull out 8 different Hebrunes today. I'll just set that there where you can see it and enjoy its beautiful color. And let's see what's up for you this last weekend before Rosh Hashanah, as we come into these very last days of Elul. Our central issue coming out right now is the letter Nun. And what has come right before that is a blank rune. What's coming next is the Tet. We have the Ein, the Gimel, we have the Chet, oops. Below that we have the Yud, and one more, the Samech. All right. So, our central issue is the letter Nun. And this is it right here. The letter Nun is it's about humility. It is like a bent over servant. It's someone who is in service. They say that Moses was the greatest servant of all. So it's bent over in humbleness and some subservience. I use the word neman, which means faithful servant. And it is about, just being humble. Being humble right now. It is the number 50 in Gematria. So it has to do with 50 being the Jubilee year. The Jubilee year, which is interesting because we're in the Shmita year, just coming to an end now. And the Jubilee year will be, I don't know when it's going to be, sometime in the future. Some series of Shmita years into the future. But it's the time when we release everything. We release all of our slaves. We forgive all of our debts. Release ourselves perhaps from slavery. And it's about power and the strength to lead from a position of humility. And it has to do with, in the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, each one of the letters has a foundation that goes with it, and it is the foundation of locomotion. So it's like movement, but it's continuous movement, locomotion, like the traveling, I guess, in the desert. And that's our central issue right now, this idea of humility, humbleness, being a faithful servant, not a false humility, but an actual humility of spirit, of feeling one's appropriate place in the face of the awesomeness of creation and the divinity. And that's where we are in Elul. That's where we are in Rosh Hashanah. As we go into Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it's that feeling of what is our place in this grand vastness of all of creation and the divine. So that's our central issue right now, this idea of humility. And what has come right before that is nothing. It is the Ein Sof, that which is the material out of which all things are made. So Elul is this blank month. It has no holidays of collective celebration. It's just this blank space that is a preparatory time. And we've just come through that. We've just come through this blank space of no holidays, except for Shabbat, and preparing ourselves, being in that void, the tohu vavohu, the material, the primordial ooze from which all things were created. In that vastness of space, that vastness of blankness. That's come right before us, and now we're in this humble space where we can see our tiny speck self in that. And the thing that's going to help us through right now in our time of humility is is ayin, and ayin is an eye. It is the concept of vision and being able to see. And it's about also being watched over by the divine. This one has come up in all three readings today. So it's about knowing that we are being watched over, and that God's eyes are on all of Israel. As I say, the eyes of Yah watch over everyone who wrestles with divinity. It is this ultimate completion number. It is the number 70, and that's 10 times 7, 7 being the number of days of creation. So it's this ultimate manifestation of completion. That's what we're coming into, the end of the year. The end of the year. So as we're working on our humility, finding our place in it, in this blank space, we can look to the completion of this year and the vision of what's coming ahead, and knowing that we're being watched over by the divine. It also is the foundation of laughter. In the Book of Creation, the Sefer Yetzirah, it is the foundation of laughter. So maybe laughing, maybe finding joy right now, even in your humility, being able to find something of joy, looking for something that will make us laugh, will get us through this time of humility, not being so dour that we miss out on the blessings that are there for us. And what isn't going to help us right now is the letter Gimel. And Gimel is a foot. It is a camel. It is that idea of movement forward. So it's interesting that we've got locomotion, but we've also got moving forward with a foot, about walking, progress. And it's also about running and returning. And because it's on the lower line, it's generally something that isn't helpful. And so I'm going to read this two different ways. One is that if you're concerned about not moving forward, maybe you've got some fear around moving forward. And the other way to look at it is the idea of running away. Don't run away from what you've got going on here. Don't run away from your humility. Don't discount it. But instead, be with the humility. Be with that, maybe that feeling small right now. Maybe that's the discomfort that will help you endure and get you through to the next year. And if you find yourself being afraid that you can't move forward, if you find yourself being afraid that something is going to trip you up, that you're so humble you don't deserve to move forward or something, then move yourself back up here. Move yourself back up into vision, seeing what's real, seeing what's true, and also seeing that the divine is watching over you. And find something to laugh about, for goodness sake. Do not get stuck. Do not get stuck in this fear of not moving forward. Instead, know that in your humility you still have the ability to see, and you still have the divine watching over you, and the ability to laugh, in some ways the instruction to laugh. You need to find joy in this time, even when we're moving through blankness, even when we're humble, even when we're afraid of not moving forward or wanting to run away. Find something to laugh about. Find something, see through this time. And when we do that, that'll move us into the next place, which is the letter Tet. And the letter Tet is a vessel. It is like a womb. It's like a cup. It's like a clay pot, and it's holding us with goodness. So the word Tov begins with the letter Tet, and so it's this time of being surrounded with goodness. And also, it's like a womb. It is the number 9 in Gematria, and then the 9th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So it represents that 9 months of gestation in the human. So we're moving from this humility into a time of gestation, maybe the 10 days of awe that we have between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, when we get to really contemplate what it is that needs to change for us to move into this new year in a healthy way. So look to that vessel. Look, when we move out of humility, we're going to be moving into this gestation phase. It also has to do with the 9s that show up in the shofar. So we've been blowing the shofar all month, in the month of Elul. And there are sets of 9s. There are 9 staccato blasts in the Truah. The tekiah is held for 9 counts. And there are sets of 9. There are 9 sets of 9. We end up with 100 blasts on Yom Kippur, on Rosh Hashanah, and the big blast on Yom Kippur, the Tekiah Gedolah. So it has to do with the shofar as well, and that harkens to renewal. So this renewal, this gestation time and birth, and all that is good potential, all that is tov, all that is good within. So we're moving from this humility into a time of gestation and goodness within, and renewal. And what will help us through that period that's coming right up is Chet. And Chet is the number 8. It represents the infinite. So we have this idea of 1 more than 7. 7 is the number of days of creation, and 1 more than that is the infinite, the number 8. And of course, when we put the number 8 on its side, it looks like an infinity symbol. Chet is also about life. The word chai, which means life, starts with the letter Chet. Oh. There it is. Chet Yud. Hi. It wanted to go to the Yud. So we're, in this week's Torah portion, we are admonished to choose life, that we may live. That we're given a choice between life and death every day. And we should choose life. This is life force. And it's also like a chuppah. It's like a marriage canopy where we make a contract with ourselves, with the divine, with another person perhaps, to stick together, to choose life together. It has to do with the gullet in the body, and so therefore having to do with speech. So it's about speaking, and perhaps right now, as we're moving through with humility into this time of gestation, we need to think about what we need to say to others. What amends do we need to make? What is it that we need to speak through our gullets into the world in order to manifest the new year into being? So that's what's going to help us right now in this time is this idea of the infinite, the idea of life, choosing life, the idea of the chuppah, making a contract with ourselves, with the divine, with another, to choose life, and speaking that which needs to be spoken right now in time, as we're in this gestation phase of the Tet. And what's not going to help us in that, or what maybe we are fearing in that time, is the Yud. Now the Yud is that small oneness, that small 1 point. It's the smallest of all the letters, the first letter of the divine name, the Yud He Vav He. And it's hard to imagine how that's not going to help us, but maybe if we just focus on I don't know, if we just contract ourselves too small while we're in the gestation phase, we won't be able to choose life. Maybe we want to stay into the seed phase, but we can't. We need to gestate and move forward into life. We can't stay a seed forever. We have to endure the discomfort of breaking out of our seed pod and being gestated and becoming life. So what's not going to help us is staying small, staying in that seed state in the near future. We need to break forward. We need to gestate. We need to choose life. Or also, it could be about being afraid of connection with the divine. This being the Yud, the first letter of the divine name, the Yud He Vav He. Maybe there's a concern about our connection with the divine. We've been humble and we don't deserve, or whatever it is our minds tell us. If we find ourselves fearing the divine, or we find ourselves in so much terror that we can't birth, we need to focus back up here on the infinite. We need to focus back up here on this choosing of life, so that we can be born from this womb that's coming up. And of course, Yud represents 10. It's the 10 days of awe that are coming right up. So don't be afraid of those 10 days of awe. They are going to help you get born here. It has to do with the 10 emanations, the Sephirot, all those things that come from the divine. Don't be afraid of that. Allow that to be birthed also. Yom Kippur is the 10th of Tishrei. Don't be afraid of Yom Kippur. It's coming whether you like it or not. Don't fear it. Instead, choose life. Choose to be written in the book of life. Choose that contract with the divine. Choose that contract with yourself as we gestate in these coming 10 days. And when we do that, that will bring us to this last letter in our reading, which is the Samech. And Samech is about being surrounded. It's about being surrounded with comfort and the presence of the divine. It's a circle, so it's about that cycle and circle, the year coming to an end and to a beginning again. All things are cycles and all things are circles. That's going to bring us around this kind of reincarnation thought. This is like renewal here, but this is like rebirth. This is this idea of Gilgul, the wheel that is reincarnation of our spirits. It's about cycles and seasons. Here we are in the first day of autumn. And even though it feels like it's that time of year where things are dying, it's still also a new time. It gives us the potential to move forward into the next year. It's the first letter of the word smicha, which means ordination, and simcha, I believe also, which is joy and celebration. So let yourself be ordained, and as we move through all this time of gestation, we get a new chance, a new cycle, a new season. You know, the circle is this geometrical idea where all points are an equal distance from the center. So there's this idea of equality in a circle. And interestingly, the Samech is about the foundation of agitation in the Sefer Yetzirah. It is, in Paleo Hebrew, it is a thorn. And it speaks to that being surrounded and protected by a thorn hedge around your fields or around your home. So it has both this idea of protection and agitation, but it can also be the agitation of joy, like excitement. So we're moving into a time of agitation of some sort. And maybe it's the challenges of the 10 days of awe. Maybe it's the challenges of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and that transformation, that cycle, that turning. But maybe it's about joy. Maybe it's about excitement at something new. Maybe it's about laughter. But whatever it is, it's surrounding us. It's ushering us into the new cycle that we're coming in. And it's bringing us around to the beginning again. So as we're in this time of humility, where we're examining ourselves, having just come out of the month of Elul, just coming out of the month of Elul, this blank time, and we sit in humility with the knowledge that maybe some things need to change, that we'll be able to see what it is. Maybe laugh at ourselves a little bit. Not run away. Not run away from what needs to change, and not be afraid that we can't move forward, but know that we have locomotion. Know that we're moving forward, whether we like it or not, because of cycles and seasons. And if we are afraid of walking forward, or if we are afraid or trying to run away, turn back up to sight and vision and laughter. Find something joyful. And that'll bring us into this time of gestation, maybe the 10 days of awe, this gestation time where we are sitting in the womb and waiting to be reborn with those shofar blasts that are coming in sets of 9. We're choosing life. That's going to help us get through this time. Choosing life every day, every moment. Choose life. And if we find ourselves being afraid of the 10 days, afraid of the judgment of Yom Kippur, afraid of the divine, move yourself back up to, again, choosing life, choosing to make a contract with yourself, with the divine, to choose life and get through this gestation phase. Don't be staying in your seed pod. Break free. Break free and gestate into this time of completion of cycles, that circle, being surrounded with love and comfort and protection. And for those of you who chose the Italian prune, the plum, this beautiful purple fruit, I hope that you find fruitfulness in this new year, in this last weekend of Elul. If I don't see you before then, I will see you in 5783, coming right up on Sunday night. And I wish you a wonderful Shabbat and a wonderful last weekend of contemplation as you move into the last days of Elul. Lashana Tova.